Have you ever wondered where the poop goes? On this episode of Colonize the Ocean podcast, we talk with Chris Canaday about off-grid waste sanitation. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Colonize the Ocean podcast, where we discuss oceanic colonization, exploration, and education with your hosts Adam Jewell and Brendan Traxler.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Colonize the Ocean podcast. My name is Adam Jewell, and with me, as always, is my handsome, freshly shaved, bearded friend, Brendan Traxler. Brendan, how you doing today?
All right. Are you having an earthquake over there? Because
No, it's the fact that my camera's wobbly, and so
okay.
when I barely touch the table, it does that.
I'm good.
No, we don't have earthquakes up in South Dakota, so. And with me today, Brennan, you want to give the intro to our guest today and the topic we're going to dive into?
We have Chris Canaday here, and we are going to be discussing a topic we briefly covered last season, but what do you do with poop when it comes to seasteading and underwater habitats and just in the ocean in general? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that, I think.
All right. So, Chris, tell us about yourself and, your background and your knowledge, your expertise, and why is it that you know what to do with the poop, how to say.
Right. Yeah, I'm a biologist, and I mainly have been working on birds and natural area planning, national park planning, that kind of thing, in the Amazon. I've been in the Amazon for like 30 years or something like that, here in Ecuador, the Amazonian part of Ecuador. And, so I've always been involved with biology on big scale things, right? And it was only now over 20 years ago that we bought a house on the outskirts of a little town here in the Amazon. And that house had a flush toilet like everyone has. And it dumped into the little stream where all the local kids were swimming and fishing. And our house was at the upstream end of the neighborhood, right? And so it was like everywhere else in Ecuador, all the sewage going straight into the river. But in this case, the house was now mine, and there was no one to tell me that I couldn't experiment with my poop, right? And I'd heard about these dry toilets. And because that's the big solution here, is to not mix stuff in water. If you're mixing everything in water and you're doing seasteading, or even more so if you're down underneath the water, I think you're mentioning, then you're going to be in everyone's sewage one way or another when you're swimming around your home, right? But if we don't make sewage, then we're not swimming in it, right? And so anyway, so like I said, I'd heard about these dry toilets. These are urine diverting dry toilets. We keep the urine separate. And that's important because urine is a big resource. It's a great fertilizer for agriculture, and especially for trying to do something sustainable out in the middle of the ocean and produce our own food. Everyone should get over that taboo of not wanting to use urine as fertilizer, because it really is great fertilizer that everything plants need to make our food again, right? Almost everything. It's like 90%, right? And if so if we've got 90% in the urine and we're also giving the plants our decomposed feces, and maybe even our shower water with, the dead skin cells and whatever. If we give all those things back to the plants that are making our food, then they're really going to have 100% of everything they need to make food again. And they just need to open up their solar panels and get more energy, leaves. And so anyway, like I said, I'd heard about these dry toilets and hadn't paid attention like everybody else, sort of went in one ear and out the other until we bought this house. And I said, okay, there's no sewer line, um, half the time there's no running water and whatever. And so here's a great place for this dry toilet. And so I built it in an experimental way, thinking that, okay, if it doesn't work for whatever reason, if it's leaking or whatever, I'm gonna take it all apart and build a fire on the place and sterilize everything. And but my wife was living there for 3 months after we built it, and I went and I was looking for any problem, right? And I stuck my head down into the chamber where the poop was and everything, and there was no bad smell, and there were no flies, and there was really no problem whatsoever, and no water being wasted, and no contamination anywhere, just fertilizer going back to the plant the way it's supposed to. And so I said to myself, how come nobody knows about this, right? And so I've been promoting it since then. And on the seasteading front, it's an interesting story. I was surfing the internet like we do, right? And this video popped up about how they're doing seasteading and how it's going to be totally sustainable and eco-friendly and everything. And so I wrote to the Seasteading Institute, okay, well, and they even said that it's going to help to clean up the oceans. Not only not going to contaminate, but it's going to help to clean the ocean. And so I wrote to them and said, okay, what's your plan for sanitation? Maybe I can help you polish something on it or learn something myself or whatever. And they basically said, well, I wrote that plan. I don't know if you're also in that group, the whole Seasteading Institute and Blue Frontiers.
We're friendly with them, and we have good communication with them.
Yeah. So in any case, I basically wrote up the whole plan for them together with some other people, but the sanitation part, I think that was mostly my doing. And they had the plans to build their first ones in French Polynesia, but then that didn't happen, and one thing after another. And I was hoping that in the process everyone got on board with this and whatever, but the seastead that Chad and Nadia did and Rudy, I'm not sure exactly what they're doing with their sewage, but they had a water toilet, and so it was going into the environment one way or another, and I guess there too, to have one couple on the seastead out in the middle of nowhere, that's sort of like the Achuar people living out in the middle of the forest and whatever. But we're all thinking about bigger settlements, right, out on the ocean. And one thing is to run into your sewage, another thing is to run into someone else's sewage.
Yeah.
But anyway, and now with what they're building in Panama, I think I'm not sure exactly what they're doing, but they're thinking about some good toilets. They're not building exactly the way that I've been recommending, but they're not far away. They're not far away, and I think they're open to different ideas. So that's how I got involved in this, and one of my perspectives on seasteading is that this can be a spotlight for a sustainable technology that we should really be applying on land.
Right. And I got a couple questions when it comes to dry composting toilets, because I'm sure most of our listeners know what they are, but there's some people out there, like you, that glosses over and they don't understand what a dry composting toilet is and how it works. So can you kind of discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, there's a lot out there, and most of the time when people say composting, it's a different system than what we do.
Okay.
And there's all gradations, there's the whole scale of options. But usually when people say composting, the urine is going in together. And like I was saying, what we do are urine diverting dry toilets, and people, just sort of instinctively freak out. Oh, but how can we keep the urine separate? Because every time that I sit on the flush toilet and I get up, they're all mixed, and whatever. But your body keeps them separate, And so if you just have a funnel toward the front part, the urine falls there, both from men and women. Everyone has to sit down, right? If men are peeing standing up, they pee in the wrong part, right? So then there's going to be more smell because the urine's getting mixed with feces, and that mix is what most produces the bad smell, right? And so a lot of people, um, uh, have bad reactions and bad impressions. Oh no, I've seen composting toilets and they reeked and whatever, and they were most likely ones where the urine was being mixed together, and who knows what cover material they were using and everything. It's like anything else, if it's done right, it can work right, right? And so yeah, I invite everyone to look on Wikipedia, urine diverting dry toilet. We've got a really good article there. If you read Spanish, you can read the Spanish version, and I translated that. I also have a blog, which is kind of easy to get to if you speak Spanish. It's just dry toilet in Spanish, inodoroseco.blogspot.com. And anyway, so I've published lots of different experiences and models of dry toilets. There's a lot of models on the market of, sit down, urine diverting dry toilet bowls. I personally don't recommend those. I think that those are just made so that they look like the normal flush toilet that people are used to. And it's actually much more economical and practical to just build with normal materials from the hardware store.
Yeah, so I guess the big question that keeps on coming behind is, okay, you've taken care of that, but what do you do with all the waste that you've collected, or where is it all going then from that point in time?
Yeah, okay, that's a question, of course, that always comes up. And so the urine is kept separate, and that can go straight to our plants. I usually just have a perforated hose buried in the ground among, garden plants and fruit trees and whatever. Um, and on a seastead, that could be going into hydroponics, or whatever, that's going straight back to the plants. And the feces, um, they fall into a separate part, and we cover with soil, right? Soil is the best thing for controlling smell and flies. And, a lot of people use sawdust and wood ash and different things. But soil really is the best thing, and it's very logical because you add soil and you're inoculating the new poop that just came out with all the soil microbes that are going to break it all down and make soil. And it really does control the flies and everything much better than the other materials like sawdust. And so it's not a large volume. Everyone imagines it's a huge volume, but the huge volume is all the water that gets dumped down a toilet, just to get it out of sight, right? And so in this case, you do your business and you just add 1 cup of soil on top. So it's just this one little layer that's enough to control smell and flies and get it out of sight. And there's different ways of dealing with it. And the way we normally do, there's a plastic bin down there with a polypropylene woven sack, like they sell us flour or potatoes or fertilizer or whatever in. And that lines the plastic bin. And when it's starting to get full, we just pull out the whole bin and tie the sack shut. And then it goes into storage somewhere, protected from sun and rain, and in this case, the ocean and whatever. And in 6 months in the tropics, maybe double in the temperate zone, it's soil. It's all broken down. There's no smell. You just open it up, and it's like the best potting soil that they would sell you at the supermarket, whatever. Um, yeah, really no fuss, no muss. Um, Everyone always imagines that we're going to have this huge pile, right? But actually, it's basically the same amount year after year, right? We can have a little bit of excess that goes into, gardening and whatever. Um, but basically, the poop itself disintegrates. It's mostly water. The water evaporates out. The part that's not water is mostly bacteria that finish eating each other. And so what you're left with is mainly the soil that you threw to cover it up the year before, right? So that same soil um, just keeps getting recycled, and it keeps getting more and more fertile and more specialized in terms of all the microbes to break down exactly everything that comes out of the user, right? And to break down toilet paper, right? In the first couple of years that we were recycling the soil like that, um, we would see sometimes toilet paper from the year before, and it's not a problem. Any bacteria that was on it, it's long dead. Um, Something just fell on the tin roof. You could probably hear that. I think it was a guava. Yeah, and the and yeah, and so it just gets more and more specialized to break down everything, including the paper. And I think there could be a lot more studies done with this, and I want to get a lot more microbiologists involved and people who do metagenomics. You know about metagenomics? Where they can take a swab of anything, or in this case, they can take a sample of our soil and extract all the DNA. And in the computer, they can sort it all out, all the sequences of all the DNA in there, and they can say, oh, okay, this is bacteria DNA from this species, and here's from the user, some sloughed off stomach lining, or whatever, and and uh, and one could see what's going on there, uh, in particular in terms of diseases that people are worried about, cholera and diarrhea and all these things. With metagenomics, someone could do the study and determine, okay, here's this dry toilet, here's this user with cholera. Okay, in how many months does cholera disappear from the pot?
So with these dry composting toilets, I can't talk right now.
Uh-huh.
Um, what's the maintenance like on these? So like when you have these systems, like what do you do to make sure that everything goes as you need it to? I mean, is it complex? Is it pretty simple? I mean, do you spend a lot of time making sure that like you don't have smells? Do you do a lot of change out? Like what's your routine with these?
Yeah, good question. And it's an interesting point too, because maintenance and everything is much less than with a flush toilet. With a flush toilet, if it's going to be presentable at all, someone's got to be scrubbing it with that brush basically every day, right? Um, whereas with the dry toilet, the urine fell into the front part of the funnel, it just went away. The poop goes down into the poop part, and you added a cup of soil. Just we want people to aim, right? We don't want them to get the soil in the urine funnel and whatever. But it's very simple, and like a normal sized family might change their sack of poop once a week. Maybe it's part of some weekly cleaning of the house and whatever. And it's really no problem, right? And so, like I say, it's less work than the flush toilet that everyone is brainwashed is the only option. And if you think about it, it really can't be logical for the place we're supposed to poop to, look like the porcelain bowl that we ate out of, right? Why should anyone expect it to be that? And why should anyone expect it to be, white? Obviously there are, other colors of toilets, but 90% or more, probably much more, are white, because everyone's freaked out and they want to make sure that they can see any speck poop in there, whatever. And, whereas, with the dry toilets, it's much easier. And there's another model that I have on the drawing board. No one's built this one yet, but we can build it with you if you want, or any of the readers, any of the listeners. It's a model in which the person doesn't have to remember to add the soil. I've got this all worked out, on paper. The person just goes, does their business, and just by having been there and having stepped on a little pedal, right, without thinking about it, that's all the energy we need to add a cup of soil. It's not rocket science.
And that was that's my next question, is because especially here in the Western world, we've become, spoiled, I guess. And how many are willing to add the extra step of putting a cup of soil or sawdust or whatever it may be into after you go every time? I think psychologically there's going to have to be that hurdle people have to get over, the mass population. I've seen, dry toilets in the tiny home community or off the grid people. But I haven't, you haven't seen any, Holiday Inns have dry toilets in them yet. And so I wasn't sure if you had run into any of that stigma there of negativity towards them.
No, I mean, you have to educate people about them. And we have them at our ethnobotanical park here in Puyo, Ecuador. It's called Omayere. You can go to omayere.wordpress.com, or for more up-to-date stuff, go to Facebook and just look for Parque Omayere. Anyway, what is it now? Over a decade ago, we shut down all of the flush toilets, and we only have our dry toilets there. And basically, all of our tourists are happy to use them. Every once in a while, someone will ask for the bathroom, and we explain to them about the dry toilets. And every once in a while, someone will say, "Oh, I'm just going to hold on for a while." But the majority, once we explain it to them, say, "Oh, wow, that's great."
Yeah, this is definitely a subject that people want to ask about, but they don't necessarily want to talk about. So I think it's good we're having the conversation, because it's a health issue on top of whatever it has to do with seasteading or off the grid living or whatever you're doing. But it is a health issue too.
Yes, absolutely. And it's something that Westerners just take for granted. That toilets are these, right? And for example, there's a lot of cases where national governments here in South America will come into communities. "Oh, you poor Indians, you don't have toilets. We're going to build some for you." And they build these sit-down models, and they don't get used because the indigenous people are more hygienic than the city people who brought the sit-down toilets, right? And they don't want to sit on that seat where somebody else was sitting, right? And it's much more hygienic to squat. Yeah, and so with the Achuar people, we build almost always for squatting. Only if it's a place, only if it's a place for tourists out among the Achuar, then we build for sitting. And we've actually interviewed the tourists that go out there. What would they think about a squat toilet? And the majority said, "Oh, that's great, no problem, bring it on." And a lot of them have traveled in Asia and everything, and realized that it's more hygienic, no problem. And that was the other thing I was going to mention with respect to the question from before, is that We also built these in the fanciest jungle lodge in Ecuador. It's called Napo Wildlife Center. It's in Yasuni National Park, arguably the place in the world with the most biodiversity. Right, it just blows you away in any group that you look at, the trees and everything. Just one piece of information. Um, in a hectare of forest there can be over 400 species of trees.
Hmm.
Right? and so anyway, so we built there for these uh, first class tourists, right? We almost built for the cabins themselves, but the people bringing the money, had the typical reaction. Okay, these tourists want to see all kinds of weird things out in the forest. They don't want to see anything weird in the toilet. We have to we built vegetated sand filters to treat the sewage there, and the water goes back into the lake cleaner than when it's pumped out of the lake, right? And that's a whole nother system, uh, and it is another option for seasteading, what I call closed loop black water recycling, or sounds nice to say closed loop flush water recycling, and we're actually implementing that in the house that we're finishing now. And this is an interesting thing that no one has done in the world, even though it's the most logical thing if you're going to have flush toilets. Um, my wife didn't accept building the dry toilets in the fancy house that we're building. Um, and there might be reason behind that. Someday down the road, if we want to sell it, the buyer may not understand about dry toilets, whatever.
Right.
So they're normal flush toilets. Only the sewage from those toilets is never going to go into the environment because we're going to treat it with anaerobic digestion and vegetated sand filters, and then the water is going to be crystal clear, no smell. And instead of putting it into the environment with all the pharmaceuticals people are consuming and cleaning products and who knows whatever other chemicals might be there, we just put it back into the same toilet, right? And like I said, that can also be an option for seasteading. More expensive and more problematic, more things that can go wrong and whatever, but it's definitely an option. It's definitely an option. And yeah, and 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 in case it wasn't clear, we built the house. This was kind of complicated for the architect, but she did it, and then we were able to build it this way and everything. That normally the water from the toilet and the sink and the shower all gets mixed in the floor of that one bathroom, right? And then you have this massive volume of contaminated water that gets out of hand, and in 90% of cases in the world just gets dumped into the environment without any treatment. You may not have known that number, but that's the number in the world. And places like the United States are the exception, right? And like I said, it's extremely logical because no one even imagines that the water in the toilet is clean and potable and whatever because somebody just pooped there, 2 minutes before you did, right? And whatever. So as long as we get rid of the smell and the color, no one's even going to know that we're doing it.
Right.
And by keeping all the gray water, all the shower and sink water and laundry and kitchen water separate, the volume is manageable now, right? And all the dangerous part, is a small volume, carefully managed, and all the gray water, it's not so dangerous. We're not exactly sure what we're going to do with that, but I think I'm just going to send it down a perforated hose buried in the ground out among our fruit trees and whatever, and it'll get treatment as it filters up through the soil, and our trees are going to get more nutrients. And like I say, nothing dangerous going there.
No, like always, it's like with a lot of our guests, I get to sit back and really just learn a lot of it. And it's just it's really interesting to not only do you have methods of basically not hooking up to plumbing or community plumbing or whatever it is, but um, you repurpose it too, which is really cool because my thinking going into it, before we got a chance to talk to you, is like, okay, it's about a way of just getting rid of the waste without having to you do plumbing. So it was really interesting to be able to learn from you that not only um, can you have a good system that doesn't have to require like I said, the community plumbing, whether it's a city or regional, whatever it is, but you can repurpose it and put it back into the environment or reuse whatever it is in a safe manner that not only is it just safe, but it's actually beneficial for the environment in a lot of cases. So, I mean, that's just really cool to learn about that. And it's kind of what the world needs right now with a lot of different things.
Yeah, absolutely. And no one has worked out how much coronavirus is being transmitted um, through people's poop and urine and everything. But one of the most efficient ways to test is to check a whole city's sewage line. You can do one test, there every week, and you can actually know that it's starting to peak or whatever long before, like a week before it peaks in the hospital, right? If you monitor the sewage, and like I said, it's a lot more efficient because then you get the sewage from the whole city instead of testing all the millions of people in that city. You can just take one sample every week. Oh yeah, the city's at this level. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's it's a really crazy to think about, but like you said, it makes a lot of sense too. So Brendan, you got any last minute questions for him?
No, I say, was there anything, we have our buzz questions we want to ask, but I wasn't sure if there's something more in this subject that you wanted to maybe expand upon or talk more about that we hadn't covered yet.
I wanted to mention that I put together a playlist on YouTube about sanitation ideas for seasteading, and can't remember the exact name of that, but I'm sure if you search in YouTube for something sustainable sanitation for seasteading, it should jump right up, and I can send that link.
Yeah, if you would, we'll put that in like the show notes and link it in YouTube and all that stuff when this goes live. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. And and like you're saying, it really is the most logical thing to do in the world. And the new model that I was mentioning, where you don't have to remember to do anything, you just go and do your business, walk away, and the cup of soil gets added. That model is especially for multi-story buildings. And so I'm imagining apartment buildings that don't produce any wastewater at all, because we have dry toilets, and that's eliminating about half of the wastewater, right? And a lot of the other water can be recycled on site for like laundries and different things, and the other gray water, that's not getting recycled per se back into the same use, can be used for irrigating urban agriculture and gardens and whatever, and we can be throwing zero sewage into the sewer.
Yeah, makes sense.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So Chris, thanks for taking time to come on our podcast and talking to us about this. And I know I learned quite a bit, but that doesn't take much, though. I'm new to a lot of this kind of technology and this world, so everything's a learning thing for me. So but yeah, thank you for taking time. I know you obviously stay busy doing all this work, and like Brendan said, we'll include your link to your Facebook, or I'm sorry, your YouTube channel to show the playlist for those. We'll have that in the show notes for our people to be able to watch. But I got nothing else. So, Brendan, you wanna finish anything off?
Yeah. So your blog. Is there anything else in your YouTube? Is there anything else you want us to put out there for people to find out what you're doing?
Yeah, I'll send you those links,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, there's a whole network in the world working on sustainable sanitation. Um, I may be on one end of one of the more extreme people in the group, but yeah, but it is something really important to do in the world and solves a lot of problems all at once.
Definitely. Well, like Adam said, we definitely appreciate you taking the time to meet with us and do this because it's all about, just like with the dry tour, it's all about educating the public, and this is just one more facet. We are able to do that. So
I'm just
Absolutely.
glad that I got to have a professional conversation about poop for a while. Usually, I don't get that opportunity, so this was fun.
Right? Well, thanks for having me on.
no, definitely, thank you.
Thank you
Adam.
very much.
We would like to take this opportunity to thank our first patron, Edward. Thank you very much for your support. As a patron, you get perks such as early access to the podcasts and other videos. Plus, we'll have polls from time to time that you get to take part of. So we encourage you to hop over there for as low as $1 a month and support us on that.
Thank you guys for tuning in again to another episode of Colonize the Ocean podcast. As always, you can check us out on our social media platforms. You can see us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Library, YouTube, Reddit. All you got to do is look for Atlantis Sea Colony and you'll find us. Also, if you're able to donate to help us support our project, go to www.patreon.com/Atlantis Sea Colony. For any other info and the links to all those, you can go to www.atlantisseacolony.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next episode.